are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
Who's scruffy looking?
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Nerf Herders. I'm your host, Corsec9, and today I have three special guests. Recently, the Armada Rule Set Collective and the Legacy teams made some big announcements, so we're going to talk about some of that today, including the merger. With no further delay, I have with me today Nick Larson, or some of you will know him online, Unskilledfirstofficer. Say hi, Nick.
Hello there.
I also have from the ARC core team with us today, Elred, all the way from France.
Hello there.
And we thought it would be good to have a playtester come on and kind of share some of their experiences from doing the playtesting besides just the core team members. So we called upon Smizzy from the United Kingdom.
Hello there.
Nick, I know you've been on podcasts before, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What kind of fleets you like to fly? What's your Armada experience? For those of you, those be familiar with who you are.
Yeah, I've been playing for, now that I think about it, like much longer than I thought. It's probably 2018, 2019 timeframe. A rather competitive player. I enjoy tournaments a lot. I play in them a lot whenever I can. I'm trying to think of I feel like I've been playing a lot of everything. I don't know if I still have a common fleet I run anymore. I think most people know me from the Bale 130-40 list I ran a couple of years ago in the Basketball World Cup.
Yes, and I'm very familiar with all the jank you kick our butts with locally. Elred, how about you? Tell us about yourself. How long you've been playing? What do you like to fly?
So for me, actually, I think I played for even longer than Nick. I think I started Armada in 2017, casually at first, because at the time I was playing X-Wing competitively. So I started doing Armada events after COVID, once we were allowed to go out, basically. And as for what I've been playing, even though these days it's been a couple of years I've been playing Anakin MSU and mostly squad left fleet, I wouldn't say I have a favorite fleet. I tend to prefer low squadrons. Still didn't get the time to learn it, actually.
All right, Smizzy. I think you're probably the least known of the group here. So, what's your experience? What do you like to fly? What style list? What faction?
Yeah, so I think I picked up the game in 2020. Played very casually there. I think my first event was in 2023. So started getting into the scene properly then. Played ever since then, been hooked. If anyone from the UK is asking about me, they know me for probably flying double victories, quite like that fleet. And recently I've been trying to get into GAR a little bit, so expanding my horizons.
Well, let's get down to I don't know if it's the biggest news, but along with the Arco 3, or maybe we'll just call it the Community Edition launch, Legacy and Arc announced that they have formally merged. So, Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I think one big piece of news, and I think it's the timing. I think because right now I think we're starting to converge, especially as the game's been out on its own for longer. And I think in the beginning it made sense for us to be two separate organizations, since we did have right after ANG left the game. I think we had very different focuses. Like I said, as we get farther past that point, there's going to be a lot more overlap. And I think it makes sense in terms of we have a lot of duplicate members, and I think we'll be starting to converge more and more. And so I think it makes sense to consolidate a lot of that, bring a lot of the processes together. And hopefully it'll also simplify things a little bit, just so you don't have too many different toggles for like what kind of rule sets you're using, or like what's allowed or what's not allowed. So overall, it should be a good change and keep things from being too complicated.
All right. Arco 3 has been in development for quite some time now. I was brought on as a play tester just a few months ago, so I kind of came in at the end. But Elred, why don't you talk to us about the goals of Arco 3 and kind of what went on there.
Yeah. So one of the things that was in Arc's objectives at first are actually objectives. That's something that came up almost literally since Arc actually was created. I think that Arc should look at that. So one of the emphasis of this release is let's say I don't want to say a rebalance, even though it's a bit what it is. The idea is that it's been a while since we know a bit what's going on with the objective meta. Like we all know like what kind of raids are good. It's going to be most wanted. It's going to be advanced gunnery. Very sometimes surprise attack, depend on your fleet, but for each category of object, we have kind of a tier list that exists. And one of the things that we would like would be to see more diversity in the objective meta, more viable picks, and that's why that's what we focused on for Arco 3. It was a bit it was not really possible to do it before due to the newness, let's say, of community made content. So for this release, it was one of the big topics. And let's say there is a diversity on one side, and also we know that for some fleets, the current objective pool can actually create situations that are a bit annoying as an overall. At a high level, where you have one player that propose a suit of objective to their opponent that is basically either forcing them to lose terribly or to not play the game. And that's something that I think that's one of the higher level design goal. We think that if you come to play a game of Armada, you should ideally play a game of Armada. So that's also one of the things that we are trying to address in Arco 3. So for example, with the strategic change, but also other examples.
So you guys have also already announced, and you've done spoilers for some of this stuff, and there's been a significant number of points changes specifically to the Republic. Can you talk about those a little bit?
I think Gar in general just has a very limited selection of ships and diversity. And I think CIS, for example, has gotten a few more adjustments already. But for Gar, it's just like you compare like a Venator Event 1 to like the Recusant, and you see Recusants all the time. It's a large without a defensive retrofit is like, I guess, the key attribute here. But the Ven 1's more expensive and its navigation profile is just terrible. And I think, like I said, people take Recusants all the time. Part of that's because Patriot's Fist, but also because it's a very maneuverable large. And so there's just a couple of ships in Gar like that where it's just like they're a bit overpriced and it's needed a bigger adjustment. And so it's figured we should do a pass now. And if we need to do another one down the road, we can. But we felt there was enough things that they could get their own pass of stuff.
Yeah, and I think like one of the core assumptions is that the Clone Wars faction are a bit behind in terms of content, at least. In terms of potential, it's a little bit more up in the air, I guess. We see Clone Wars list do very well all the time, but players tend to gravitate toward the Empire and the Rebels. So I guess it makes sense to take a look at Republic. And for CIS, I would say it's. I mean, I'm saying this at the top of my head. It's not like a concerted discussion that we had, but it feels like for the legacy content, CIS gets just a little bit more out of it than Republic. So for me, it's a nice balance of both. By including legacy, we are giving a lot of options to CIS and Republic also. But I think the point change are more needed at the moment for the Republic than for the CIS. And we didn't touch anything that was already identified as good in the Republic. So it's mostly the unpopular ships that are lagging behind a bit.
Smizzy, did you playtest much of the Republic points changes, or did you play against them at all?
I've played with and against them a little bit. It's mainly, in my opinion, targeting the weaker ships. You know, I've seen the Clam 1 plenty of times, the Victory sometimes, but outside of one competition, I don't think I've seen things like the Imperator. So it's nice to see those get some love that they need. And what I see often from Gar is fine where it is, in my opinion. So I'm happy to see that those haven't been changed.
I think the Clam one was actually not early draft of the points change, and we actually some of us actually mentioned that it probably didn't need to be helped that much.
Clan
Yeah.
2 definitely appreciates a little points adjustment, though.
Yeah.
Very, very appreciates.
Yes, I've enjoyed list building with these Republic points adjustments. I think it has allowed and encouraged some builds that just weren't possible before. And I think will open up the kind of fleets we see from Republic. And hopefully they'll be strong enough to be competitive and not too overpowered, but still interesting and good.
Yeah.
What about, was there any text changes on different cards?
Yeah, I think there's some upgrades if that's what you're referring to. Okay, and I think that goes to the main philosophy for this release was that with the minus GAR, most of the things we're trying to look at are things that cannot be fixed with just points. So these are things that require text changes. Because points are a lot easier to do, we can do it later. They're much easier to roll back. But points changes, like changing the wording on an objective, for example, or maybe you radically change like an upgrade that's dead. And there's just some stuff that you can't fix with points. And so that's like I said, most of the things you'll be seeing in this release are going to be some variant of text change. Which is, I guess, like I said, so sort of like one of the, I guess, the philosophies in deciding like what things are we going to look at, what things are we not going to look at for this release.
All right. Well, so what about the design process, the approach and test strategy? Talk to us a little bit about that, Elred.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, it brainstorm discussion process within core and admin team at first to get a package ready with various thematic package. Like we usually release a document per type of things that we want to test. Then we put that out to the testers, which usually generate another round of discussion that lets us clarify what is the intent of the change, how the cards are working. Potentially that generates a bit of a feedback loop where some things weren't really anticipated, we update, etc. Then, I mean, I say then, but this all happens. It's like it's in a Discord, right? So this all happens at the same time, right? So when playtester plays their games, it will be the same in Legacy, I believe. We do one thread in the Discord per game, which then lets us discuss again about what was tested, what was the impact of the change on the game, versus what would have happened if the content wasn't changed. What are the concerns of the players about it? What are the feedback? And from that, we integrate that feedback into the next versions of the package if we think that we need to change them. And all of this go in a loop. Every game is recorded in a fantastic spreadsheet with what was tested, who tested it, where can we find the the discussion, things like that. And we go on and on until the end of the cycle, let's say. Another part of the process that I didn't mention is obviously if we feel that some of the content was not tested enough, which can be a thing, especially with how wide this update was going to be. We try to encourage our testers to test specific things. So, for example, I have 16 games about the Republic changes. Well, that included the Republic changes. Maybe not all of this generating meaningful comments or feedback on what the changes were doing, but they were used. And so in 16 games, nobody told us that Clan 2 was overpowered, for example. So that's a good sign, right?
So, moving on, I think one of the more specific things that you guys changed was a keyword to squadrons, which is screen. Screen now reads, while you are defending for each other friendly squadron at distance 1 of you that lacks screen, up to 2, you gain dodge 1. Why did you guys feel that needed an adjustment, and kind of talk about how you landed where it ended up?
I think this actually goes back to Arco 2, I think, a little bit. As one of the things that didn't make the cut originally was we were thinking about giving bulbs escort. And that's just because screen as a keyword just doesn't really work most of the time unless you have escort. And then for Arco 2, we were on the fence about this. We were going back and forth, and I think we just decided to give it a small, just to do the points drop on the bulb instead. But for Arco 3, we were looking back at this and so like, well, screen still doesn't work. Bulbs are slightly better at 14 points instead of 15, but fundamentally they're still not a amazing squadron. And so I was pushing back for like, well, let's go back and take another pass at escort and see how it goes. But I think it feels weird to have a keyword that's like essentially dependent on another keyword. And I think we were looking at different options. And so like, well, what is screen supposed to do? What is it? How does it make this squadron stand out or be unique in some way? And I think we went through several different variations. I think there were a couple that turned it into an offensive keyword, like it was like an adept. It gave you like adept to like some value, for example, instead of being a defensive bonus, just to make the bulb more of an appealing target. But we ended up going back, I think, after a couple of months of different iterations to a defensive version of it. But I think we made a small change to change where it's tracking the screen rerolls from. And I think Smizzy, you got to do a few tests with it. I think there was one person. There's one test in particular. I'm trying to think if I don't remember if that was you or someone else where they didn't read the card. And so I think there's someone who's complaining about Watt getting like turning a 5 damage saber shot into 0 because they somehow re-rolled all the dice in the pool. Maybe that was you, maybe that was someone else, but I think you played it with a few times, correct?
Yeah, I did play it a few times. I don't think that was me.
Okay.
I think I remember most of the games, mostly at Rebels. I experienced it, but it is a nice change. Certainly makes the bulb more appealable. Outside of the aces, anyway, without this update, I only really saw Wat Tambor, maybe TIE Advanced Vader, or I quite like Grievous Squad. So that was where I saw it, but there was no reason to take a generic bulb, and now you probably, in my opinion, will see them. I'm certainly starting to put 1 or 2 in a squad ball when I'm making them, so the appeal's definitely there now.
I mean, I think that's a good goal in terms of like, you don't want to, I don't think we want to see it spammed, but hopefully considering 1 or 2 is a good option. I guess, we should say what we picked or what we changed to it. So screen is now, instead of being measured from the attacker, you just check, the defender just checks if they have friendly squadrons in range of themselves, but the cap has been dropped to 2. So it's now much easier to proc, and you can also have squadrons behind you that will let it work. And as it turns out, it makes that a much more usable keyword, much more appealing effect.
One thing that I've appreciated, especially after I saw all the final changes kind of in one place, I'm not seeing anything that's like super overpowered or underpowered as far as changes go. But what I'm liking is like there are a lot of thought provoking changes, especially in the objectives that make more objectives at least look usable. We'll see once they hit the masses and see how well people like them. But There's some objectives that you would just completely ignore before, and now I think are good options in a lot of fleets where there wasn't a lot of obvious choices before. I know there's been one blue objective that's been very contentious in the past, and I know it's been a big headache to find a good solution to adjust it because it's kind of abusable, and that's hyperspace migration. So the new hyperspace migration reads setup. The second player places 2 objective tokens in the setup area. Each token must be placed at distance 5 of a different 3-foot edge and beyond distance 5 of a player's edge. Place obstacles excluding the station beyond distance 5 of any objective token. Special rule. At the start of the ship phase of the first and third rounds, the second player places 1 Purgle not in the play area at distance 1 of 1 objective token and centered on the line traced between the 2 objective tokens. Objective token must be the same during both rounds. When a Purgle moves, it must move toward the objective token at the opposite 3-foot edge. When a Purgle touches that objective token, that Purgle is removed from the play area. At the end of the status phase, if a ship has an objective token, remove that token, and that ship's owner gains 1 victory token. End of round. After a Purgle moves, if it moved at least distance 1, every ship at distance 1 of it without an objective token gains 1 objective token, and victory tokens are worth 10 points. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about that one?
To give context, indeed, we want to do small changes essentially. I think it's like it assumes the game is in a good spot overall, right? So any change that we do is obviously going to be a small one because we don't want to break that good initial balance. That said, for hyperspace migration, it's a problematic objective, right? Because you can play it in a way. I'm not sure if it was intended that way. I don't know because I have the FFG developers to ask. But the way you see it play usually is someone's putting all their fleet in a corner. If they want to be extra defensive about it, they deploy them horizontally, and then they farm the whales all day. So if you're first player, you usually start fighting in round 4 at the earliest, let's say. And if you don't have something like a demolisher that can speed up and punch things in the rear, it becomes very, very hard to contest. So it's an objective that encourage a lot the corner fortressing, so to speak. So we wanted to adjust it, like to bring him a little bit more in line with the rest of the objectives and like keep the core thematic of it, but try to make it so it's less abusable for second player. It's less easy to present a situation where the first player cannot engage without being down 100 points or something. So what we did change on that is actually the main thing that changed is the distance at which you can place the objective tokens. So currently you only have to place them at distance 1 of a short edge. So you can put them both on your side and have the trajectory of the whale be horizontal line that will like skirt your deployment zone. Now the both objective must be placed at distance 5 of the short edge, but also at distance 5 of the long edge, which means that the whale spawn point will be much more centered. And like you can still put them reasonably close to you, but it will not be so hard for the first player to come contest it. Like that won't be as much of difficult strategy to enact. So it's more it feels more a little bit more like contest those posts, but the outpost is moving now, and this should bring some more action to this objective. It should not be anymore an objective that you disregard outright because you cannot come to the second player fleet in time. The other thing that we change is the points. I think well, we didn't change the total amount of points, but we made it so you score every round instead of every other round. Yeah, that was difficult to develop, right? There is that there is a thread. I remember where the first time it was played, they actually pinged Nick to ask how they could play it because they instantly found a way to block the whale, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was. I lost a lot of sleep trying to make this work. Yeah, and I guess one other thing we changed is that the scoring only triggers if the whale actually moves towards the opposing token a minimum distance. Because I think that was another case where people would block the whale in the corner, and so now
yeah.
you can. And I think one of the big things is that like you have to let the whale move a little bit, otherwise you won't score. And I think I guess one other thing sort of tangentially related to that is we had to change towards as an effect because people would just block things with squadrons, and so which would sort of make this a problem if the first player could just throw a tie interceptor in front of the whale. And so we changed it so squadrons no longer affect towards movement, which will also matter for Doom Station too. So hopefully all these changes will make the objective.
So that was one of the objectives that changed, and it's a pretty big change on that one. It's been a contentious objective in the past. Are there any other objectives you want to talk about?
I think one of them, I think people will probably wonder why it wasn't fixed. If I guess if I asked you what's the worst objective in the game, like when new players show up and they have it in their fleet, people yell at them. It's fleet ambush. Surprise, surprise. We were also wanted to try to fix that one, but I think ultimately it's just it went through several iterations. But it's just too hard to find a balance where the second player felt like they had a reason to take it and the first player wasn't immediately. It talks about like non-playable scenarios. I think Elred had alluded to that at the very beginning, and it was difficult because of all the different restrictions. I guess if anyone had ever played Sam's fleet from a few years ago with the interdictor onagers, speed zero shenanigans, I think he one shot at Liberty top of turn one with that setup. There was, and to try to make this objective better, we were trying to force the first player to put everything up in this ambush zone. But then we had to put a bunch of restrictions like, oh, maybe you can't put proxy mines, you can't put the gravel token, you can't put ignition tokens. Because the moment, if we don't do that, I know exactly what's going to happen. And I don't know. It's like I said, we did a lot of testing. I think Smizzy, you played this a few times. I think in its various forms, and some of them felt okay, but I think some games were okay. But I think you can talk about a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I mean, we've all had an experience of fleet ambush. We've seen someone's fleet get wiped out in a second. But this iteration we tested was kind of the opposite of the usual. I remember one game where I played it with a separatist squad ball, and it was against an Imperial with the Venator title for the Imperial Venator. And as first player, it was tough because I couldn't start at the speed I wanted to because there was a speed limitation. It was a struggle as well, losing the deployment advantage when you build a fleet around having a deployment advantage with so many squadrons. And most of the games testing were just not really that pleasant. But obviously that's how you find out what works and what doesn't. I think it's going to be a very difficult objective to get in a playable state for what it needs.
Yeah, I think that was my ultimate. I think because we were trying to make it work to the last minute, essentially. But we weren't able to find a way that felt good for the first, like, use good for the second player without being terrible for the first. And if it wasn't terrible for the first player, it was a huge liability for the second. And I think the premise of it also just has a lot of problems, because I think in wave 1, because I think it's a original game objective, my memory.
Yeah, it's a core
It
set
could have
objective.
worked. It was a core set. Okay, good, thank you. I think in the core set it could have worked potentially. Maybe you have like the first players puts all their ships out in the ambush zone before the second player, and the second player can like pick around that a bit. But as the game's gone on, I don't think that premise is workable anymore, just because there's Radis game, there's interdictors, there's proxy mines, there's ignition, and as Smizzy alluded to, it's just, I don't know if there's a way that this objective can exist. And I think we were trying to, for the most part, to keep the objectives to the core that they already were. We didn't want to totally flip something on its head, and maybe that's something that maybe Fleet Ambush is like one of those exceptions. Maybe down the road again, we can look at it again, or just get rid of it entirely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think for this round we had quite a lot of things to take into account. I mean, for me, I think there's a way, but it's like we need more time. essentially, we need more time. And I think what we address in the release that's going up is already quite a big step. Our objectives, I mean. So it can wait a few more months.
All right. So one of the upgrades that got changed is nav teams. I like this change a lot. All right. The new nav teams. It starts with a nav token on it. It has an exhaust and a cost to refresh of 1 nav token, or 1 nav. During the determined course step, you may exhaust this card to increase 1 yaw value by 1. So how did balancing nav teams go?
So I mean, I can talk a bit about what went on with that. The idea initially was to give a bit of competition to Engine Tech in that slot by popping up another card that was going to do something with navigation. I mean, I guess I can mention it because it won't make it through, but initially we even made Engine Tech a modification, and that was not a popular change, to say the least. Well, essentially, we had a lot of discussion about that. Making Engine Tech a mod would break a lot of interesting builds overall. But we kept the nav team change that was supposed to provide an alternative, and I think it's really helpful. Like as it is currently, you have no reason to take it, not only for the opportunity cost, but also for the effect. Giving up the standard function of the nav token is to get 1 yaw is a bit tough when you have to pay a slot and points for it. So this version is much more easy to use. Makes the game more fun because your ship turn more, can do things that are a little bit more interesting, and it feels worth the 4 points. So that's my take on it. At least that's how I see it. I've tested it in one game with the Republic Victory, and it was actually very very fun to have this ship being able to turn. So because you can combine it with a nav dial, and that's quite a fun change, I think.
I think there was also, I think the original version didn't actually have a refresh cost. I think Smizzy, I think you were the guy who, well, I figured you were going to have to change it to have some sort of cost, but I think you're the one who broke it with, was it Medine?
Yeah, I decided to take it to the extreme and bring Maydeen with CR90s for as many clicks as you could ever dream of. So naving Maydeen's extra click and the nav team extra click for nearly a 180 degrees turn at speed 4 on a CR90, which was incredible to fly, but it would lead to some problems, I feel.
Well, I think, like I said, I think we knew the unlimited use would probably be too good,
Yeah.
but much too good. But sometimes it's good to start from something that's a little too strong.
Yeah.
But I think I like the current version quite a lot. And I think you, Jeremy, as well. You, as you said before, you're a big fan of it.
Yeah, I do like nav teams. I kind of come from the Smitty school of thought when he used it on Dumpster Fire. I very much appreciate that strategy. I also enjoy engine techs on certain ships too, and I was one of the ones that did not want the mod tag added to that. So I like that there's options now, and I actually was list building the other day with Gar and found that nav teams going on that Gar Vic. That could be pretty interesting. I haven't put it on the table yet, but it could be interesting, like protecting your flank or something to that effect so that it can turn a little better. So I like that change.
I think as well, the Gladiator is going to like this card. It's not something I've tested yet, but that extra click and freeing up the dial when you may want to be navving to just get an extra click could be very good as well.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
I know I ran it with some Palpatine with some Architon's command cruisers with that, and it was another ship that likes having some extra clicks of yaw. It was very good, very handy. So it'll be interesting to see what people do with it, especially since it's a cheaper upgrade.
Yes, that's one of the other things I liked about it too, is that it's on the cheaper side. So it's a way you can get it in there to improve one of your ship's maneuverability or give it some flexibility in how it runs its dials, and then still get that nav. And one of the other upgrades that's getting just a small tweak in wording that I'm kind of excited about with list building, and this is probably going to be a benefit for Republic, but we'll see how it plays out for others also, is Bomber Command Center. Um, the new wording is this. It's just very. It adds one word basically. While a friendly squadron with bomber or assault at distance 1 to 5 is attacking a ship, it may re-roll 1 die. A squadron cannot resolve more than 1 bomber command center card per attack. So basically, it just gives a re-roll to the few squadrons in the game presently that have assault, which I think that's pretty cool. I think it'll encourage different squad balls, which I know a lot of people complain about. We just see the same squads all the time. I think this will encourage some new squad ball makeup.
Well, I can mention a little bit. There was one that's interesting because there was one concern that was brought back to me from the French tester literally yesterday about it, about um, about how Draven might use this. And I actually really like that change because for me it's not a Draven change. So because essentially you can give Fenro and Cannon a reroll, but Draven already does, so it's a bit of a diminishing return. I don't think you take Bomber Command in a Draven list. And other than that, it's kind of exciting for CIS for TF. I've been wanting to try TF for so long, and the HMPs look very good, but also quite expensive to use. And I think with this small tweak, it starts to be a lot more interesting to really try to make the combo happen, basically. So yeah.
Never thought I'd heard Bomber Command Center TF in the same sense. One thing too is this is like I think Raid when they first came out with it as a keyword was they were pretty timid, and or I guess Assault. So hopefully this will be more consistent. And as I think Elred mentioned, like CIS can do some fun things. I think there's some Gar squadrons that can do some fun things, and the poor gauntlets might see the table once before they get put back away, but it still helps them out a little bit for the brave souls who are willing to try.
I think the Clone Wars are the big winners of this change with the lats and the gunships. But like you mentioned, you may see gauntlets in the. I've been trying to build a Constantine list with gauntlets, so this may give me another push to make that eventually.
We have one squadron that is being added to the game that I don't think has been spoiled anywhere yet, and that is a CIS squadron, and it's Moralo Eval. He's on the YV666, and he's got the same 3 speed and 7 hull. He has 2 blue and 2 black anti-squad, and 2 blue anti-ship. His special text is, when an enemy ship with at least 1 raid token ends its activation at distance 1 to 2 of you, you may move up to distance 1 and attack as if you were activated. He has the keywords of Bomber, Grit, and Rogue, and he costs 22 points with a single brace. So he's somebody who could take advantage of those HMP-enabled raid tokens on the ships that we were just mentioning.
Yeah, I think he's got some interesting parallels to his Imperial version, but I'm much less worried about his potential for abuse, because he is tied to enemy ships and their activations versus Moralo being triggered off of objective tokens. So I think he'll be an interesting option, especially with Dooku, maybe with TF. I guess, Smizzy, did you play test him at all?
I didn't get to run him. I've played against him, but he's definitely a presence on the table. If you have a single raid token, normally you may not want to get rid of it at times, but with him about, knowing that you're going to end your turn near him, there is certainly instances where you need to think about getting rid of that raid token. And just alone on himself, he's a bit like my reaction to when Django came out. It's a rogue, double dice, blue bomber for the CIS, which is very nice, even if you don't get his ability.
I think it's only justice, like the character is from Clone Wars and he wasn't in the Clone Wars faction. So thematically, it was needed.
Yeah, and I like that he does something. He works well with Dooku. I think normally, like I feel like Dooku, you dump raids everywhere, but half the ships don't even care. So it's one way to incentivize Dooku's master plan, I think. But I think it's also can be worked around, and that's important in terms of giving the opposing player ways to work. I guess because it is a potentially powerful ability to get extra attacks, but I think there's ways you can get around it in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think there's counterplay, and he'll be an interesting option. I don't think he's going to be overpowered. It'll be an interesting list building option. Well, thank you, Nick, Elred, and Smizzy, for taking time to come talk about some of the upcoming changes that everybody's going to get. Thank you for your time invested in developing them and making sure that they were good changes and well tested out for the community before releasing them. And with that, we will catch you next time. Thank you.